You know. Ìṣẹ́yá ìṣẹ́yá ọmọ ogun ìṣẹ́yá Elédùmarè iṣẹ́ máa yá o. Ìṣẹ́yá 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 ọmọ ogun ìṣẹ́yá. Ọmọ rere kì í sáṣẹ́, ọmọ ogun kì í ṣọ̀lẹ. Ẹ bẹ̀rẹ̀ gbẹ́rù o, Olúwa ń bẹ fún wa, ẹ tẹra mọ́ṣẹ́ o. Ìṣẹ́yá 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 ìṣẹ́yá. Thank you very much all around the world for every one of you that have the time to join me this morning. My name, as you know, is Olaniyi Rashid Akindiya, the Akirash himself. And today, what I really want to discuss with you was that I was so curious, and that curiosity was to know what is the ways of communication before all this technology that we are using now. Because when you look at since the time of this COVID, I think many of us who are not used much to all this technology are getting to learn and start using it, because it's the only way we can bridge between the distance between other people and do businesses and do so many other things. And I think for 3 years, it's been on my agenda of traveling to countries to study how people communicate before letter writing itself started. And that's, for me, it's very, very important to see how I can share what I've learned from all this trip and what I've hear from people, and part of what I also witnessed while I'm growing up in West Africa, which is in Nigeria, by the Yoruba people. From my research and from the founding, it tells us that the first beginning of communication starts with smoke. As well, we ask ourselves, how does people use smoke to communicate among themselves? And I think the idea was that they find that using trees, using the leaves, using bark of trees and roots, when they burn this thing, they have specific kind of trees that tells them the rates of when they put fire into them, and the kind of smoke, the height, and how long that smoke is going to be. And that also comes with what kind of trees they want to choose, what is the kind of message they want to send, and how long did they want the message to be. And you know, at that time, there's no other ways of communication. So when the farmers, the kings, and the chiefs want to send messages, they take their trees and they choose particular trees. If they want to send it within only the villages, if they want to send it within 2 villages to 2 villages, or they want to send it across more villages, maybe like 5 or 4 villages. So it depends on the trees they will choose, and that will determine how long and how far the smoke is going to go into the air, and then people will see through their own destination where they are, and then they will have the idea of what is going on and how to gather together to be able to hear what the message is all about. And that was the first part of it. And then the second part, which we say development take out of that, it moved into using objects. And then using objects becomes not only using the leaves, not only using the trees, but also moving into using the animals. And then using the animals and also using into using, like when you say you use snail. And you know, where I come from in Nigeria, we have, it's not the same kind of snails you see here in the US, which are very, very tiny. Snails there, they are like big, very, very big, that when you see, it's a whole meat on its own. So people use the shells, and what we ask ourselves, what does snails represent? Snails represent patience. And we understand the movement of when you see snail moving, they are not running fast, but they go gently and gently on their movement. So when they want to send messages, in kind of they put these kind of objects together. Like when you says there is a war between 2 villages, people will take something like a pigeon. Instead of taking a whole complete pigeon, they take only the one white feather of that pigeon. And then they take the snail to add to it, the shells. Then they take a red feather from a parrot, they add to this. And then they take a peacock, they will take the feather also from peacock, they will add to it. Then you ask yourself, what does individual of these materials that they put together and give to somebody to take as a message, as it becoming a messenger to go to the next villages and give to the chiefs. And this is how you see that people also have to, they have people who are very wise to decode individual of these materials, and then they now put all the meaning of individual of those materials together to understand what the message is turning across. After this object, I think the next one that also came after that, who follows that, was using of musical instruments. A musical instrument, apart from being using it as a music for people to listen, to celebrate, to dance, is also a way of communication among people. In those days, one of the things that first one of part of musical instrument people use is drum. And drums also have specific kind of drums that they use. And one of the drums they use is behind me, which we call talking drums. And talking drums is a very, very important drums, which people use in those days to speak. So most of the times that it has specific people who can have the ear to listen, to be able to decode what it's saying. And you know, there is also another thing that people also use at that time, which is also another musical instrument, is horn. Horn also is one of the things that people use in kind of sending messages. And also with that, it has specific people who could really understand what it means. And also when we are talking about today of how people use the CIA or FBI or MI5, they use it in kind of a decoding and coding things for people not to understand it. So this is also not something that it is being started today, but it's been started right from years and years backward that people have been using this. But development changes of how people use it. So the next other things which I know that which follows the drumming or the musical instrument is body painting, body design, marks. When you see some people have some kind of mark where I come from, there's a lot of people who have different kind of, some is just only one, some will be like 3 or 2. And this also tells you specifically that this person or these people come from this kind of tribe or come from this kind of family. And this also becoming also part of what you see when people design on their body. And when you look at those days also, the artists who designs, who draw, who do all these kind of body marks or body drawing or body paintings or wall painting or rock paintings, they work for the chiefs, they work for the kings. They don't own ownership of what they design and they don't sign it. So when you see most of designs, most of patterns that you see in the past that brought to today, has no artist that you can say, this is, I design it or it is mine. Because those days, they only design for the kings. They design for the chiefs. They design for people who have wealth at that time. So they owns it. So with that, it becomes what people use in those days, kind of a way of sending message among themselves, communication among themselves. And then with that becomes a tools that it increase and it changes as time goes on. Even one of the ways of also communication, and we should go us into the economy, is also using of cowries. Cowries becomes a chance that people use to pay, as when you need something, you need a fruit, you want to buy this. And also if you don't have cowries, then you decide to use trade by barter. And trade by barter becomes a way that if you have yam from your farm, and I am a farmer that I plant pepper. So if I need a pepper and I have somebody who also need a yam, so it becomes a way that we think, how many pepper can I give to you, a basket of pepper that would be equivalent to 1 tuber of yam, 2 tuber of yam that I need from you. So this becomes a way of also exchanging and becomes a way of communication. And communication, as we said, is a very big tool that make us to understand each other, make us to move forward, to dialogue among each other, to do businesses, to know information on what is going on, what is going to happen, and how it's going to happen. So I would like to stop here to see if there is any questions that you quickly want to ask before we move on from where I am now. You can mute if you have a question or you want to have a kind of a contribution to it. I'll be very happy.
This is Amelia. I'm wondering about the use of color. If
Yes.
color was part of the visual communication.
Yes, color is part of visual communication, and you know at that time there is no colors that we really use, but color those days are from clay, and each individual countries or tribes at that time have a natural resources of clay, and clay comes in black. You see some in ochre, some are in red. So all these are part of what they use, and most of those times also is as a way of like when we move from that area, most of the time they use it in dyeing their floor, because most of that time they use clay to build their houses. And as time goes on, because of the dirty and the breeze that blows, so they do a way of making a kind of a concoction which they will use leaves joined with roots, and then use the cow dung or horse dung and add clay to it, and then they will use this to paint the floor and paint the wall of their house, so that with that it will becomes more kind of indigo or dark black, which it becomes a way. And also they use it also as a way of painting their faces on their body, depending on kind of ceremony of what they are trying to do. It may be marriages or coming of age that they do for males, and all the kind of ceremonies that or naming or becoming a marriages, naming ceremonies, and coming of age. So these are things which colors is being used for in those days. Any other contribution or questions? You can mute yourself and then you can ask, we could be able to hear you if you are saying something.
I just love all your elaborations of human communication. Thank you.
Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ banjo, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ banjo, akira ṣìdìde o, kójó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ banjo, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ banjo, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ banjo, akira ṣìdìde o, kójó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ banjo. Mo ti sọ fún màmá mi wípé máa tèlò ní o. Àjòyó wípé máa tèlò ní o. So to continue with what we are saying, because most of these objects, as we say, they have their meanings, they have their purpose when you use them. Like one of what we say is that when you see people use a white feather, it symbolizes mostly peace. It symbolizes that they are hoping for a better thing. They are looking for a dialogue to come to a solution that everybody will be in a kind of harmony. And when you see that they use a feather like peacock feather, it represents authority, which shows that the kings is involved in the message that is sent that person. That is the authority which is symbolized. And when most of the times when you see the red feather, which is mostly from a kind of peacock, a parrot, I want to say, people use this because if there is a war or there is a problem between families, between friends, between village to village, they put this together to find a way to see that how can we sit down, how can we solve this, how can we come together to hear stories or hear the problem between both sides and then find solution onto this. And then one of the things again which I've noticed, which is also one of the research that I found out, is that is the using of symbols. And symbols, as we said, they are many. There are some a kind of series of symbols which come from Ghana, and which they call Adinkran. And Adinkran has almost like around 200 pieces of symbols which comes behind them. And all these symbols has individual meaning and what they use them for. And then also you have another set of symbols which come from the Ariwa, from Nigeria, west northern part of Nigeria. And also the same thing, another set also come from the eastern western part of Nigeria, which they call Uli. And the same thing is another set of another symbols which also come from Cameroon, which they call them Bamidele. So all these kind of different symbols. The same thing also when you go to South Africa, you go to Zimbabwe, you find something they call Nzebele. Nzebele, which is also another different set of different symbols. And all these individual of these symbols have a categories that go under them, but they have different kind of meaning. In the project which I'm also, as I said, I'm working on, is to see how can I bring 4 or 5 symbols from different kind of countries or denominations of tradition, which has the same meaning, and then form a new one which I can call on my own, but also have origin from where they come from and form a very new one, and then use them as painting on human being, and then take photograph, document the video of it, which are things which I'm working on now, which will become part of what you will see in the future. So this is part of what I have come across even before I will say colonization comes to Africa, which people start learning about messages of using alphabet, letters, and numbers. And when you also look at the history, it also tells us the civilization from Siberians, when you look at Egyptians, when you look at the Greek, how they use symbols to become what they use towards their writing on their wall, or also even using it on how to be able, when you look at Romans use these symbols in a way to be able to decode or code themselves to be able to conquer many wars while the time of their own centuries. So the same thing is part of what I'm working on now, to see what are the ways, what are the purpose, and how does this civilization, those kind of communication help us to now, to this present that we are, and how does people borrow from that to be able to develop and moving from stage to stage. And when you look at writings, and when you look at that, even when after the colonization in Africa, most of the slaves, most of the people who work with the missionaries were not really trained how to read Bibles or read Qurans and any other things. Mostly at those times that you see them sneaking through the windows or through the open door to listen to their masters when they are talking. So each of the languages, one or one that they learn from or they hear, they went in the night when they gather together as slaves, then they tell themselves exactly what they hear. So they teach them. Mostly the women are the ones, because they work inside the house. So they are mostly the ones that brought most of these pidgin languages. When you see the English, when it is not the real English, but they call it pidgin, which is more like a kind of a first steps of how to learn the languages of British at the time from part of West Africa. So this is also another ways of how people learn. And when you look, when you have ever been able to hear it, even the BBC have BBC Pidgin, which is mostly classic of what the Liberian use, the Nigerian use it, It's also using in Sierra Leone, mostly in Cameroon also. The same thing in Ghana. So it is a way of where you see the market women's and men's use in communication among themselves to be able to sell and buy among each other. So this is where the project is at this moment, and I don't want us to go into the writing and the letter, but I want us to look into how all those movements from the smoke taking us to the object, taking us to musical instrument, and then taking us onto symbols, and then giving us the power of carving, which also is also another ways of how people communicate, which they symbolize what the kind of seat that the kings are sitting on, what kind of table they are using, which symbolize the power, the status, and the honors of the families, which also are part of this. I would like to stop here also again to see if you have questions or you have a contribution to where I am now. Any question where I am? What do you think about what you just hear? Have you come across anything about this before, or hear about this before, or you have something also I also can borrow from you that I can use in my own project which I'm working on now?
Well, this is Amelia, and again, just thinking pre-verbal, if body language or dance or gestures, again, were part of that communication and coding and things.
Yes, you are very right. It's also like when we assess body languages, when we says dancing and all that, it comes with part of the musical instrument. It comes with when they use that symbols. So these are part of what it's under that. That's why I'm saying that if we have to break a symbol into a lot of divisions or parts, it's a long 1 hour will not be enough for us to break this. So, but as you said, the communications comes with also body languages and symbols. I think it's also one of the things sometimes I try in my house to use it among my kids for them to and something most of the time they use they confuse with it because it is not what they used to. But the idea was for me also to practice those things that I'm also learning, those things that I'm also hearing from people, and what's part of the research I am coming across. So with that, to see how is it possible for people to use body languages, to use proverbs, to use symbols among themselves to be able to communicate. And it tells you that it has specific people among them who will really understand what is going on, and it will have many people who will not really understand what you are saying. So it's the same thing as how the problem is as today. So, but they have a way to live, and that becomes a knowledge which give them the chances to continue doing research, and that development of communication and changes as year to year is passing by. Hello, Jennifer. Hello.
Hi.
Yes.
How's it
How
going?
are you doing?
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me.
Good to see you. Yeah. I had a question about. Go ahead.
Yes, please.
I did. I just was working on something and I didn't want to interrupt. Okay. You were talking about cowrie shells and the use of communication. Could you share a little bit about different ways cowrie shells were used?
Okay. One of the first instance where people use cowrie shells in those days is mostly for economy, is for business, because in that time, there is nothing like metals or coins or notes. So people will put, if let's say they are selling pepper, this farmer is selling pepper, and that time, to tell you the fact, there's nothing like people stealing farm produce, or you put something out. People don't have security with it. They just lay their peppers down, they use stick to divide it, and they will put stone. If it is 2 calories for that pepper, they will put 2 stones there. So anybody who need that pepper, who want to buy it, will come across. When he come across it along the road, he will put 2 calories there, then he will take his own pepper and it goes away. So, and also beyond that, calories himself is also purity for people. So people use it, and also it also represents a pure and the alpha and omega, and also becomes what most of the time when you use when you see people who worship, who go through the oracles of like Ogun, Obatala, Oya, and so many other ones, which they use it. It's kind of a communication of tools between the human being and the supreme being, which is God. So when you see people like, when you hear of like this oracle of Ogun or Oya or Shogo, and in the history also the Shogo represents the thunder, and it's also symbolized kind of electricity, which people use of today. And when you see Ogun, Ogun itself is the king of iron, which is also anything that is metal. When I was kid, you know, when you in Africa, when you buy a car, people will sacrifice a dog to Ogun, just for them not to have accident because of the new car that they have. So in this, all these things becomes a kind of where cowries feature in. And at the same time, cowries also fall into the categories of beauty, and becomes what people use as a kind of dress code in their body, in their neck, just more like a bead. So cowries has a lot of significant use in different forms of how people have used it, and people have respect it and honored it the way it is.
There's a question here from Matthew.
Yes, please.
Wondering if anyone uses the gestures of commerce like counting, hand signals, or bartering sign language in performance.
Okay, sign languages and in performance and in gesture, it is like I am also a performance, and I one of the things I do is that one of the things you see in my performance is using my body itself as a communication, using costumes in designing, and using objects to become verbatim. And at the same time, sometimes I paint myself, I design, put design on the face. And the idea was, most of the times, most of all these things has to go with what topic, what issues I'm trying to address. The idea is to find a way to use every opportunity that I have to allow audience to have interact with everything that they see, between my whole body, between the movement, between the dance, between structure of what they see when the performance is happening. And I think that becomes a kind of easiest way, even though most of the time you see people, we see it as a kind of a joke or a comedy, which people will laugh. And that is the idea, because you want them to have entertainment. Then at the same time, people where you can have people to come together to have entertainment is also an easiest way to inject the truth of what is going on and to create a dialogue. Even though at that moment they may leave and not think about what you are even trying to say, but they are enjoying the movement or the rhythms and all the dance that is going on. But after they leave, because that thing will definitely come back into their mind, and then they started digesting, what is he trying to do? What is that thing that he has in his neck mean? What does he have in his body? What does that mean? Those costumes, why is that? Why those colors? Why those cowries? Why all those things that they have on their body? So this is part of what I think that gestures of symbols and all this comes together in when people using it in kind of communication among themselves. Matthew, let me know if that answered your questions. Jennifer, I would like to ask you, you work in the museum, and I remember the first time we met was in Ghana. I was in Dakar, in Senegal. That was 2016, if I can remember. And I was curious, being in the museum and being in the Department of Arts. And I remember we met again last 2 years or last year in New Orleans in the museum. And it's fascinating to see the collections that the New Orleans was having. And even though with what everybody knows about New Orleans, you feel that is the center of African descendants, and everything should be happening in that space. And even though, for me to tell you the fact, I remember I was telling Eddie that there are some things which I feel I'm a little bit disappointed that I want to see that is happening in that space to first become something that welcome you into the vicinity, into that space, which is not there. But I'm not the owner of the museums, and I cannot decide what is really there. But as he also said, he is working there. He can only do a little. He can bring a different idea. But if they don't take it, some will change, some will not change. Because I remember when we climbed up, I think it was the second floor. So we went to where all the sculptures, the carving, everything was. And I was asking him, I said, this would be like my own studio. That feel like this should be changed, should be well dignified, well separate, so that people enter that space could really understand individual of those objects, where they come from, what is history, and other things like that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, because that also becomes part of what we are talking about communication, because all those carving, all those sculptures, all those stone statues, they have significant communication, meaning where they come from, why they carve them. Even though most of those ones you hardly know the artists who do it, but it has purpose, meaning, and communication, why it's involved in that time.
I think that Dr. Nzalumba, the African art curator there from Benin, is an excellent individual to bring that forth. I think that he began in 2018 and has been really working and researching and is completely committed to reinstalling that physical space. And I agree with you, welcoming people into the museum itself, but then also into the African art collection and just contemporizing it. Your work that I saw in Dakar was phenomenal. It was a full room installation work, so colorful. One of my favorites of all of the artists that were presented in that exhibition for Doc Art. And I think that contemporary work and traditional work can live together. I also think at the museum currently, much of that work is behind plexiglass. So it's not able to breathe. It's not able to connect with individuals who are able to look at it. And so Dr. Nzalumba is very committed to bringing in everything from video to contemporary work, to performers such as you. Dr. Nzalumba was like instrumental in making sure we connected with you. How do you come to the museum? And so I see that as an opportunity to bring the work alive, and to also really explore where the work is from, how the work was acquired is a key question that I definitely have. How was it brought to the United States? New Orleans is a key port city, and for the enslavement of Africans, it was one of the key cities that brought in, along with Mobile, Alabama, and Port in Maryland, individuals of African descent to the United States. So making that connection between global African artwork and those of the African diaspora, I think is key, incredibly important. Your full room installations and your performances really bring that alive. And I would love to see traditional work and traditional forms of communication that you're discussing today really brought alive today in a contemporary sense. So thank you for that question, and thank you for sharing this with us too.
Thanks so much. Thank you. I think it's because one of the things I said is that 4 years ago I was given a fellowship to go to Brazil, and when I went there, the idea was first my project I was having in mind was to see the relationship in the past of how people dress before they brought them as a diaspora, as a slave to Brazil, and then see in the present how they dress now. What is the difference? And while I was doing this project into 4 weeks to that project, I was given an invitation to go and watch a Egungun festival. So when I was given that, because I came from a country, the tribe of people which do Egungun really, and it's been a long time that away from home, and to see it live again. So I was so excited. So I have to call the other artists, which I know they are also in fellowship with me, that, oh, you need to come with me and see this. Getting there, I was so excited to see how this is going on. And then I was again disappointed when we got to the place, because I know that Egungun festival, or which they call Baba in Brazil, is in Nigeria itself, it is something you do in the public space. You don't need tickets. You don't need somebody to lock you in the door. You don't need any, just come across it and then it's happening. It's just about the moment. So when we got there, we discovered that we have to go into some hall. And then I remember the event supposed to start 10 p.m. So we got there, I think around 8 p.m. So we were in there and everybody was coming in. So at 10 p.m., the whole door was shut. So if you come late, you can't come inside. And if you are inside, you can't go out. So at 11 p.m., the festival started. Then all my curiosity, all my love, that excitement just shut down, because this is not what I know. This is not what I've witnessed right from my kids to grown up. So, and that built my curiosity to see that, no, if this is what is happening now, this is a different Egungun festival that I know. And why I also becomes a performance was because of that, to see how is it possible for people who doesn't have access, who will not want to even go into the gallery or go into the museum, to see performance without paying for anything, without unexpectedly, just happening in a moment, and they come across this. And that is what Egungun is also all about. People see it wherever you don't expect it. You come across it, you continue following them until you are tired, and then you go away. So, and that is the difference. And that is what makes me to go into that project, to really want to tell a good stories and enlighten people on the real fact of how Egungun is, what the stories behind the masquerade, which makes me to do create another 10 costumes and then tell a story behind it, not just only as a sculpture, but you can wear it and perform and tell story that come behind individual of that costumes. So as you are saying, it is one of the things I think we are, even though we are living away from where we are really born, and there is a lot of intermarriages, intercultural relationship, and you are living among people. Also, you want them to become friends with you. You want to know their culture. You want them to know your culture. We eat the same food. We've been eating different kind of food. We eat different culture. So you want all them to learn who you are and really understand you. So the same thing also for you to learn who they really are and then understand them. And I feel this is also one of the things that when we are talking about communication. I remember before when I used to have my dread, when I have one cowries in front of me, many people used to ask me, they will ask me, what does that really mean? And I remember one day somebody told me, so you are not a Muslim, you are not a Christian, so you must be worshiping a kind of idol or something. And I said, well, if I'm worshiping idol, it means that it comes from the tribe which I come from. It's from my forefathers. So I didn't pass by any other things. But one thing I want you to understand is that Jesus Christ or Muhammad, they are prophets and they are sent to this world because they are supposed to intermediary between human being and God. So the same thing when you see an idol, you see Shango, you see Ogun, those people at that time use those people as their intermediary between the supreme being. So then they will look at me, they'll say, so, and that, you know, it doesn't only worries me until I remember when I traveled home. One day my dad was asking my middle brother, do you think Akiraj still pray, like praying really, like doing Muslim praying or reading Quran or Bible anymore? Because the way whatever he does now, the performance, his work, his art, and everything, and you look at him now, he's having cowries in his head. So with that, you know, you want to make people to understand who you are, what you are, where you come from, and then create conversation. I always tell you that most of the times that cowries create a lot of conversation between me and people who see me. And then when you tell them what is it all about, you enlighten them, you make them see clearly what they don't understand. Because when people ask you a question about something, it means they have no idea, understand what it's all about. And if you get angry or feel like they are insulting you, then you are not helping, because you need to explain. Let them understand this is A, this is B, this is C. And then with that, they understand it. And luckily for us, in the global world we are now, they will put that in the Google. They will find out more information. And then before you know, then they understand you. The next time they see you, they won't ask you the same question. So I feel this is one of the things I'm saying, that communication, the way we dress, and when you look at it also, the dressing is also another thing. Sometimes when people ask me, why do you, I always tell people that, okay, when you see people dress in this cut, in this culture, in this color, in this fabric, in this pattern, in this kind of pattern or design that you see on it, it has a meaning. It tells you where they are going. It tells you the event that is going on. It tells you what is occurrence of what is happening among themselves at that moment. I think we have another question or something.
Yes, Matthew has a question saying, how can performance be more of a two-way conversation, making it more interactive?
Okay, so I think one of the things that I have tried for many people who have witnessed my performance, and I think Jennifer will testify to this. You know, most of the times when you see a performance, it's more like a one person's performing and everybody stands looking at you. But for me, it is beyond that. I feel the idea was to connect with my audience. I think it is very important for me to make my audience becomes part of that performance, so that it becomes a way of two ways of communication. They don't expect that they are coming to be part of it. They are just there or come across you as a spectator, and then you bring them into the performance. Even though there are many people, you know, the idea was that many people are so shy, but in that moment, they will forget who they are. In that moment, you make them to become what is going on. And then, even when they watch the video or photograph, sometimes emails or people who call me or send me text me, they were like, how did you do this to me? And I always say that I didn't do anything to you. But it's that moment. That moment is something that is beyond and bigger than individual of us. So the idea was that most of the times people doing performance, it is very, very important that we allow people who are being there as an audience to be part of what is going on. You give them a kind of a role, and that role becomes what then also becomes what is going on. And then it becomes a two ways of communication. Rick, Mandelain, Kati, I'll be very happy to hear something from you. If you have a contribution, that would be so happy to hear from you guys also.
You're so kind. I am just totally enjoying listening to everything and taking it all in. Thank you.
Thank you. Because also one of the things that I've noticed is that, Madeleine, I know you use salt a lot in your work. And you know, salt is something which is also another object that people have used as a way of communication. I don't know if you know that, but it's also a way that people have used that as a way of communication between the Yorubas, where I grown up. So when the first time I saw your work using salt, and I said, she is telling a lot of story. She is bringing history into the present that we are. So using a salt and the way you use it, you are putting a refine into the way that people use it in those days. So it's a kind of a way of moving it forward into another era that we are living now.
That's so interesting. I need to learn more about that. I connect with the salt through the ocean.
Yes.
But also salt is essential for all life, or for much life. And so I think of it as a part of us, our physical beings as well. This is a conversation we're going to have later. I'm not sure everybody. I'd love to hear more about it, about how salt is communicating.
No problem.
It's 11:50. I think it's interesting when looking at different symbols across different cultures, and this connection of salt and these things that are really essential to human life, no matter what culture you're from, and how those are often woven into the communication, the symbolism in cultures all over the world. There's such similarity that I find really beautiful.
I think it's what I've come to realize, and I come to with all this research of traveling to most of these countries of Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, is to see how those interwoven on what they've used, what is happening, what those materials, the objects, the way they use it in different places will be different from the way other people use it, and sometimes they give it different names. And those different names, you come to realize that when you ask what is the meaning, and the meaning also come to realize into one thing. And the same thing is symbols. You find out if the design, let's say a kind of design which is called design of affection, and you go around most of 5 of different tribes or cultures of countries, they have different kind of way those artists have designed those symbols, but they represent the same affection. So when you take all these 6 together, and you look at all of them, you see that they are designed in different forms, but they have the same name. So the idea of what I'm working on now is to see how can I combine all those 6 together to form a new one, to refine it into the present that we are now, and then use them as a kind of new communication among people. So this is what I think it is something that we need to know, that is there is no different. It's more like an ocean, and it flows like water to each individual of culture, tradition, of communication, of how people communicate, the object they use, the way they communicate. It's flow, it enter one another. So to separate them, it's very, very, very difficult. It may be called different names. It may have a different style, but it's always kind of way that they interwove one another. So, and I think the same thing is what the culture of life that we are living now. It's hardly for you to choose which side you are. Your wife may be from somewhere else, you are from somewhere else, and the children you have, where do you want them to be in the world? We place the both of them. So this is what I think the world itself is also giving us now, to have the chances to learn more from other culture of people who are your neighbors, who should live with, who should work with, for you to get to know and come amicably with one another. Yes.
Matthew has a comment that Gandhi went to the sea to make salt, but it was prohibited by law as a form of protest.
Yes. I think it's, as I say, salt has a lot of significant roles, especially where I come from. I don't know if you have heard of a kind of a place called Osun River in southwestern Nigeria, and there is one oracle which they call Oya. Oya stand as a symbol for the sea, and this when you talk of salt or any other things, it has a way of how people use it. And people, and you know, their specific family, which the only thing that they know from generation to generation of their families is all about ocean, it's all about salt, it's all about water. So, and I think that also what is sitting down with people of how you use the salt. And when you see salt also, salt has a lot of different divisions of parts, and the different power of which belongs to them, and how they are supposed to be used, and what you can use them for. There are some that you can use them for cooking, some as just for the industry. And also, as you see the salt, even though we use it to eat, they are also very powerful, that they are very, very strong. They could destroy, they could also become. So it's also the way of how you see them, like more like kind of a mountain. There is a part in Ghana which you see that the way the salt, the crystallize of it is more like, when you go there, you think it is kind of a mountain or kind of a heap. So this is how that place is. So you have to, like, as if you are using axe to break them and take them out in a particle of like a big stones. So I'll be very happy to hear more from people, what you think about what we just discussed. If you have any contributions before we I think we might be getting to the time to round up. Salam alaikum onílé, salam alaikum onílé, onílé mo salamo, salam alaikum onílé, onílé mo salamo, salam alaikum onílé. Lọ́kùnrin pẹ̀lú obìnrin, salam alaikum onílé. Thank you everybody.